What's going on, guys? JPB Duel here. Hope you guys are enjoying your Monday. And for today's matchup, I'm bringing you an extremely long, grindy prankkids versus skystriker matchup. So let's get on right with the gameplay. For today's game, my opponent is going first as the skystriker, and he starts off his turn by activating Engage and searching for Ray. Now, I kind of made a mistake right here in the sense that I should have activated Maxi as soon as I saw the Engage go off, because he would have gone into specialing out cards on the field. This way, since I activated my Maxi right now, my opponent can just chain link his Ray to it to tribute itself to get a monster on the field. So that means I'm going to be drawing one less card than I originally would have drawn if I had Maxied him earlier. But that's still okay with us. It's one less card draw. That's not big of a deal. So then he uses Fusion Destiny, goes into DPE, and that allows us to draw us a card. Now he ends his turn by setting down 2 cards and then activates Shizuku, drawing him into an Afterburner, which the game shows us, and then the turn switches over. Now let's see what we draw into. We draw into a Dropsies. Not that big of a deal because we already had a combo starter card in our hand, but our overall hand was pretty good anyways. So I start my turn off by activating my Harpy's Feather Duster to wipe out his back row. I do not want him harassing me with the back row set anyway. So let's see what he had in the back row set. He had Shark Cannon and he had Imperm. That would have been really bad for us because if he Impermed our Doodle-Doo Search, we would not have been able to go through our full combo because we do not have Pranks or Panda in our hand. So that's out of the way. Then I Kaiju his DPE and then go into my turn. Normal out Fansies, go into my combo into Meowmoo. Now, usually you would have called by the grave the Ray that my opponent did have in the graveyard, because as long as I kill off the Shizuku, he would just get the Ray back on the field and then tribute Ray to get another Shizuku on the field and then, search for another card with the Shizuku at the end of my turn. But I did not use my Call by the Grave on Ray. I wanted to save my Call by the Grave for the Celestial that he had in his graveyard. Why? Because we already know the one card in his hand. Out of the 2 cards, one card is the Afterburners. We don't know what the other card is. But if he draws into a monster card, let's say, he can just use the Dasher in the graveyard to special out that monster, and then he'll only have one more card in his hand which he can just set down or summon and then activate Celestial in his graveyard to draw 2 free cards. Right? So I did not want that happening. That's why I saved my Call by the Grave for Celestial over the Ray. Another thing, I went through 2 Doodle-Doos. Now usually I go through 2 Doodle-Doos anyways, but this scenario was specifically I was going through 2 Doodle-Doos to search for either Instant Fusion or Fusion Destiny or Thunder Dragon Fusion, because if I had drawn into either of those, I would have been able to dish out way more damage than I originally have on the field. And if I had drawn into Instant Fusion, I was pretty sure I would have been able to OTK him that turn. But we did not draw into any of those, we drew into a Fancy, so we play with what we have. I get my Bow Bark on the field, go into battle phase, kill off his Shizuku, which triggers the Ray in the graveyard, specials itself on the field. Main phase 2, I activate my Call by the Grave, target the Celestial. He chain links his Ray to it, gets another Shizuku on the field. So at the end of his turn, my opponent will be able to search for a Skystriker card off of the Shizuku. I end my turn, recycle cards with my Prankkids Pranks. My opponent activates Shizuku, searches for a Widow's Anchor. So now I know he has 2 spell cards in his hand. He has the Afterburners, he has the Widow's Anchor in his hand. Draw phase, he draws into a monster which turns out to be a Rose, so he activates his Dasher to special the Rose on the field, and I chain link my Bow Bark to that. Thankfully he did not draw into a Call by the Grave or negate of any kind, so we get our Butler combo cards from the graveyard into our hand. The Rose comes on the field, main phase 1, he goes into Link climbing into Kagari. Kagari will target the Engage to add it back to his hand. So I chain link my Pandemonium to that so that I can go into my Butler right there, and then chain my Forbidden Droplet to the Pandemonium. So this way, The Forbidden Droplet can target the Pandemonium, send it to the graveyard, but Pandemonium's effect will still go through. So Forbidden Droplet sends my Pandemonium to the graveyard, and it all resolves. He has no negates towards this, so Forbidden Droplet target the Kagari, so he cannot add the Engage back into his hand to draw 2 cards, 1 search, 1 draw, and then I go into my Butler off of the Pandemonium. Kagari, as I said, is already negated, and then we get all our graveyard activations. So I get all my graveyard activations. I do not chain my Butler activation to this. You guys can be wondering why. Because he has a Widow's Anchor in his hand. Now, Widow's Anchor states that you need to have no monster in your main monster zone to be able to activate that card. If I had just outright killed off his field, that means he would have just used the Widow's Anchor, taken over my Butler, and that would have been really bad for us. I did not want him to have control of my Butler. But sadly, he just goes into Link 2 into Zeke. So Zeke will target my Butler, so I'll be forced to pop my Butler right here. Now, the reason why I'm using the Meow move instead of just outright using my Butler to send to the graveyard is that the Zeke banish is only for 1 full turn. Means that during, I believe, next to next turn, I get the Butler back on the field off of the Zeke's effect. So that's why I used my Meow move, banished it to pop my opponent's field. This way, my opponent cannot yoink my Butler anymore. Zeke activates, sends my Butler to the banishment pile temporarily. Then, since I destroyed a Skystriker card and Ray was in the graveyard and saw that, Ray specials itself on the field. He activates the multi-roll as well, goes into battle phase, kills off my drop seeds off of the Ray, and then tributes Ray to special out Hayate. Hayate whacks me in the face for 15, activates, sends to the graveyard a Shark Cannon. Then he activates Afterburners. Now, this was a pretty stupid move because our Bow Wow Bark did go through, so the Afterburner will not kill any monster cards that we had on the field. So that was a pretty useless move from him. Hayate goes into the 3rd copy of Shizuku. He sets down a card, activates the multi-roll, targets the Shark Cannon, puts it on the field. Shizuku activates, searches him for a area 0. That's the end of my opponent's turn. So my turn, draw phase, I draw into a Poly. Now this was a pretty bad draw because Poly I do not need it right now, nor is it a helpful card because I believe all of my drop seeds are either in the graveyard or in the banishment pile. So that was a pretty bad draw for me. Anyways, I use my Fansies, go into my combo. Now right here, the Shark Cannon play was pretty ridiculous from my opponent. What I mean by ridiculous is that I only had 1 more Meow Moo left. I run 2 Meow Moos and 1 Link Spider. I did not run 3 Meow Moos. And both my Meow Moos are banished currently. So that means I lost my access to the Link 1 climb for my prankkids combo cards forever. Because I do not have a way to recycle cards from the banishment pile on my own. So that means I will need to have 2 prankkids cards on the field to be able to access my combo because I would need to climb directly into Doodle-Doo or Bow Wow Bark. So that was really bad for us, but we still play through this. Doodle-Doo searches me for a prankkids place, I special out Roxy's on the field, and then go into Nightmare Unicorn. Nightmare Unicorn activates because I already know what the face down card was. I already know it was a Widow's Anchor, so I had to bait out the Widow's Anchor before I go into Predaplant, Verte, and Anaconda. I did all this with cards on the field. I have not used up my normal summon yet. You guys see right here, I still have my normal summon. So once I force out the Widow's Anchor, like this was the play I had mapped out in my mind, in my head anyways. I was gonna go into Nightmare, force out the Widow's Anchor, and then normal out a card from my hand, go into Predaplant, go into DPE. That was my whole play mapped out. And it happened exactly as I had imagined. So the Unicorn's effect, he activates Widow's Anchor, negates, yoinks my Unicorn. I'm okay with that. Now I make my actual play. Normal out my Lampseas, go into Predaplant using the Lampseas plus the Roxy's on the field, activate Predaplant, go into Fusion Destiny, send my 2 cards to the graveyard, and my DPE comes on the field. Go into battle phase, kill off a Shizuku. So this, after that, since I killed off a Skystriker card, the Ray in the graveyard activates. Now I made a misplay right here, okay? What I should have done what I did was I used DPE to pop DPE and I believe Ray. But what I should have done was pop my DPE and his back row multi-roll. Against skystriker, you guys have to keep in mind, always pop their multi-roll. Because multi-roll is their gateway to recycling their spell cards over and over and over. This was a mistake I did. I instantly regretted it as soon as I did it. Because you guys will see what will happen. He's gonna set down, I believe, Shark Cannon to yoink my DPE instantly. So there it is. He activates the multi-roll, sets the Shark Cannon, sets the engage. This was really bad for us. I should have thought this through. As I said before, it was a misplay on my part to target the Ray instead of the multi-roll. So now he will have Shark Cannon. Shark Cannon will yoink my DPE from my graveyard, give it to him, and then engage will search him for a card and draw a card. Really bad for us. So draw phase, he activates Shark Cannon, targets my own DPE that I have in the graveyard. So I activate Maxi right here because this will be considered a special summon. So my DP is on his side and I draw a card from Maxi, which was really good draw. I drew into an effect failure. So he activates multi-roll. Multi-roll just sends a card to the graveyard, okay? So if he sends my DP, that was my DP. If he sends that card to the graveyard, I will not have access to DP anymore after that. So I need to pop my butler to pop my opponent's DP that is stole off of my graveyard. So that's what I do. I chain my butler to the multi-rolls activation. He chains my DP to the activation of my butler, to which I effect failure and negate that because I do not want him popping a card on my side of the field. So effect failure resolves, negates the DPE, and then my butler pops the DPE, so DPE goes to the graveyard, it activates, and then I could still have the DPE on my next standby phase. He activates the engage, searches for a Widow's Anchor, and draws another card because he has 3 or more spell cards in his graveyard. Activates Area 0, targets the face down set card, does not pop open any Skystriker cards, so that was a win for us, but he had a pot of Avarice in his hand. He recycles 5 cards, all link cards from his graveyard, and he's going to draw 2 cards. I had nothing in response to this, so I had to let this go through. Then he activates Widow's Anchor, targets my Unicorn. Unicorn bumps into my Predator Plant, kills off my Predator Plant, and that's the end of his turn. He activates the multi-roll again to get the Widow's Anchor on the field, plus the Afterburner on the field. Now, the Unicorn is back in my control, and it's my draw phase now. This is a really back and forth game, guys. Like, at this point, I was like, I have to win this, okay? I have to freaking win this game. So, draw phase, my opponent instantly maxes me because he's going to have a guaranteed 1 card draw no matter what I do because DP is coming on the field from my graveyard. So, that's going to be 1 card draw. I activate DPE, and I was hoping to pop his Widow's Anchor with that DPE, which I turned out I guessed right. The Widow's Anchor was right here. I popped it. I don't know what my opponent did not activate it, but I was okay with that. So then I go into access code instantly with the cards that I had on the field. I know I'm under maxi, but I still do it anyways. Access code, I start popping his back row. So 1 pop, that's going to be 2 pop. Multi-roll, again, you have to get that card off of the field anytime you face off against Skystrikers. So I got that done. Got rid of the Afterburner as well. I was not going to pop his Area 0 because if I pop this card, he would have been able to search for a card, which I did not want happening. So I did not pop it. I go into battle phase, hit him in the face for 53, which leaves him with 100 life points. End my turn, activate pranks. I target the butler as my target for the prankkids pranks activation because I had a Thunder Dragon Fusion in my hand. If my opponent had let this pranks gone through, I would have been able to get butler on my field on my next turn. But sadly, he had Ash Blossom, so the Ash Blossom my prankkids pranks recycle. Not gonna happen. So it got negated, and then it's my opponent's turn. Draw phase. Let's see what he draws into. Standby phase. I get my DPE on the field in defense, so in case he has Lightning Storm, which we already saw he runs, I did destroy one Lightning Storm with my access code, so I was not taking any chances with that. So he activates the Area 0, targets the one face down sec card that he had. So I use my DPE, pop that face down card, but Area 0 still goes through. And he sadly flips over Ray and Engage. He targets the Engage, activates the Engage, searches for a card, and then draws a card again because he has 3 or more spells in his graveyard. Then he activates the Reinforcement, searches for a Ray, and then normals out Ray. Ray links off into Kagari. Kagari is going to activate, get the Engage back into his hand, and then he's going to use the Engage again, search for a card, draw a card. Like, at this point, I was like, bro, he's down at 100 life points. Can I please win the game? Like, there was such a close game. I was desperate for a win. So he gets Zeke on the field again because he did recycle his Zeke with the Pot of Avarice, and he targets the Area 0, sends Area 0 to the graveyard, which gets him another Ray on the field. With that, he goes into IP Mask and then goes into Link for Mech Knight Crusadia Abramax, then gets another Area 0 on the field and goes into Battle Phase. Now, Mech Knight Crusadia Abramax is a card such that it'll beat over any monster it faces off against. And any monster you put on the field has to go into Abramax, otherwise you cannot attack any other monster on the field. So it beats my access code, kills it off, activates Rose which activates Rose in the graveyard, and then specials itself on the field. Rose goes into another Shizuku, and end phase, he activates Shizuku. Oh, he does not, okay. So I believe he was probably out of spell cards at this point, but anyways. Now, I was so close I could taste the victory. There were two things I had to be worried about. The Abramax, my DPE cannot beat over the Abramax, so I have to Kaiju the Abramax, but Abramax has a graveyard activation where it says that if this Link summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can shuffle one card on the field into the deck. That was the effect I was worried about. But what did we draw into? Like, I literally top decked into a Called by the freaking Grave. This is what wins me the game. So I instantly Kaiju the Abramax. He activates Abramax from the graveyard. I Call by the Grave the Abramax, so he cannot bounce my DPE that is on the field. My opponent has no activation response to this, so my whole thing goes through. Battle phase, I just bump into his Shizuku with my DPE, end the game. He was down at 100 life points. 400 damage was more than enough to kill him. That's the end of the game, guys. It was such an intense back and forth game. If you guys do like this kind of videos, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to my channel for more daily prank kid video uploads, and if you guys are interested in the live version of all of this, you guys can check me out at twitch.tv/jpbduel. I live stream on there. Link along with my schedule is going to be in the video description itself. With that being said, this is JPBduel signing up for today. See you guys in the next video. Peace!